Jon Nelson was my pastor and my friend.
I always thought of Jon as a prophet.
A prophet is someone who is a witness for God, who speaks on God's behalf to the people and especially to people in power.
He referred to himself as a sinner.
He gave the opportunity to us to really look inside ourselves and do some self-examination.
This laughing one is one of my favorites. There are a couple of really great laughing pictures of Jon because he was laughing a lot. But I love this one. This one was just the year before he died, and life was still there for him. I mean, we both knew that we were right for each other. We didn't know each other really, but I just knew that he was a leader and that he had energy. And when we talked, the things we talked about had to do with social justice. I mean, you don't usually talk about that on a first date.
Well, we had wonderful times out here at Sand Lake. We'd do a morning walk to the cemetery and back. And it was so great because on that walk we got to talk and so forth. And the cemetery reminded us that we have to make good use of the day.
During the year, he didn't have a lot of time for the kids. But when he was here, he was 100% here with the kids. And he was not inclined to have 14 children.
He and his wife, Junie, have followed his parents' example, adopting children in need of homes.
Anna here is number 13, and would kind of like to add a little 14th one in there. If it works out, we've got some visa problems right now with a little boy we'd like to get.
They say that I'm the only man in Seattle that gets a headache every time I walk past the adoption agency.
And he says facetiously, we don't have family arguments, we have race riots in our home.
He said, Junie, the best thing that ever happened to me was you, and the next best thing was my children. And so seeing him take the time and be close with the kids was really great for me.
Amazing.
Okay, I'd like to see him cut out of jail too. When he came out of jail, that was good times too.
I'm Stephen Chapman.
And I'm David Copley, and we are parishioners here at Central. I was skeptical because I had been away from the church for a long time, and I did not have good feelings about the Lutheran Church. But I really liked Central. I liked Jon.
And we came here, and it was like immediate after the first service. It was like this was home.
There was Jon, who had a big, booming voice and a big personality.
You know, I just remember him just big and bold and, you know, like a big bear full of, you know, love and hugging.
The bear hug after church. Oh my gosh, I always said his right shoulder, his alb, was the most contaminated piece of fabric in the city of Seattle.
I remember the pastor that was speaking about him compared him to John the Baptist, a little rough around the edges and a little unconventional.
He said at one point, well, I'll tell you, when I went into my marriage, which is a wonderful marriage, I had no idea what I was getting into. You know, as newly engaged people, we could definitely relate to that.
The wedding itself, you know, it's like we're getting ready. There's always like issues. There was some issue with the organist and like something. And that day I just remember, you know, he looked at us and he was like, don't worry, we're gonna get you married.
Jon loved music.
He really enjoyed singing.
He asked me to join the choir, and he said, well, yeah, the choir's getting to sound too good these days, so why don't you come to
A radical welcome was a really important part of Jon's ministry.
That meant everybody, where they were, was welcomed to participate as authentically and as completely as they desired.
That not only welcomes the LGBT community, but all races, ages, socioeconomic statuses, people regardless of their physical or mental abilities. it's an all-inclusive welcome.
I think he was loved and respected by people of all flavors.
All the ground is level at the foot of the cross.
He saw the face of God and Jesus in everyone he met, no matter who they were and what their circumstances were. That was a really good model.
If there was somebody who needed to be welcomed, Jon was there.
I don't, want to portray him as somebody who was just boisterous and happy and joyful. He could, I think, himself experienced really some dark days that he was willing to share.
He had gone through a couple depressive episodes himself, but we never talked about that. But we all both kind of knew we had shared that experience.
When my first daughter was born, I remember Jon holding her and just saying a prayer for her, and I just felt that he was a real mentor in my life, and a very influential person when I was young. And then to see him hold this new baby and bless her life was just kind of a blessing for me too.
He was all about justice for the poor, for prisoners, he took that part of Scripture very seriously.
He's like, I want to rock your boat a little bit and make you feel uncomfortable.
It's the central message of the gospel, is that we need to change things, that we need to turn things upside down. The last will be first.
That metaphor of our life being about having a newspaper in one hand and the Bible in the other, that our faith really is political in many ways.
Jon was a lot about action through love.
It was common that you'd be sitting, in a meeting or talking, and he'd be ready to move, he'd be ready to go to the next thing.
He left everyone with a profound awareness that idleness is not going to change the world. It takes action. You can listen to the news and weep, you can listen to the news and talk and preach, or you can listen to the news and get up and do something.
You didn't want to be paid significantly more than the other staffers at Central Lutheran.
Jon actually put his pension at risk to perform same-sex marriages here at Central Lutheran.
He married us. Back in the day when there was no gay marriage, and even a non-legal ceremonial thing in a church was quite rare.
Yeah, he created our family.
It's not many people who can brag that their pastor was arrested 15 times doing nonviolent protest in his career,
At the time, he was protesting against nuclear weapons.
These things were our real gods. We can say, Jesus, we can say God, but the fact of the matter is, what do we trust for our security? Is a mighty fortress our God, or the Trident missile system?
Thousands of demonstrators protested the coming of Trident, and one group planned a new tactic of civil disobedience, a boat blockade of the submarine. Jon Nelson decided to join that blockade.
I was asked to be in his boat, which was the USS Plowshares.
He's the nuts and bolts guy at this moment in time, and I'm sort of the ethereal, we got to stop nuclear weapons.
What we got to do is make sure that the carburetor doesn't flood.
There was the prison ministry, and so I knew him through that.
Bet your life on this? Or do you want to bet your
Once a
life
week,
on that?
Jon Nelson ministers to prisoners serving life sentences for violent crimes. Each year, he found their reflections harder to ignore.
All our lives, we've been taught to try and be peaceful people, not raise your hand against the other and so forth. That's not what our leaders are showing us.
He felt those people need to be ministered to, and there's really no reason to put someone to death.
In the way that we might discuss our neighbor, I had a conversation with my neighbor about this or that. Jon would be talking about prisoners in Monroe who had life sentences.
And there's small things, like, of course, the prayer, the words that we use here, that's the first prayer that all my children have said.
What moxie, huh? The guy rewrites the Lord's Prayer to the prayer of Jesus that we say here.
God, you provide for us. We
However scattered the Nelsons have become, they gather with their mother each summer at this cabin in northern Minnesota. For the family, it's a special place. Clarence Nelson, who died in 1977, is buried here.
So this has Uncle David, and this is John. John has a hummingbird because he loved hummingbirds. We have events out here, and I bring a chair out here and sit. But Mary said, this will keep kids from running on it. I said, absolutely not. I do not want anything to stop that. When I'm buried here, I want kids to run over me, and that's why we have just stepping stones.
Yeah, I
so
like
that
it.
you can walk through and step on people and be comfortable. Perfectly comfortable being with dead people. People who say that John had a positive effect on their lives and that they felt empowered by things he did to also be involved. He would have loved that.
He wouldn't be so focused on it, that it's God's mission to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly before God. And he was just an echo of what he heard God saying.
The split between the haves and the have-nots. I mean, it's obscene now. It's really obscene. And I know that he would be hoping that his feeling about that would be carrying on in this next generation, because your generation will have to face that.
We have to be open all the time to hearing the new ways that God is calling us to be engaged in the world.
How you live the mission of Jesus is what's really important.
I think he would hope that there would be people going into all these little veins out from the main ministry, because
nothing happens in this church if it doesn't come from the people of this community.
Going out and doing the work that creates peace and justice in our world.
And I think upsetting power structures.
To continue to always be thinking not in the terms of the power structures of this world.
We are not talking about some kingdom far away that we are pining for, but in fact we are working for that kind of a world here on earth.
The one abiding encouragement was that we serve others with our lives, that we not become selfish and simply try to accumulate wealth or success or any kind of achievement, but that what we did would serve the whole human community.